Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We'll turn it over to Sarah for an introduction.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So this information from this project not only informs perhaps future work on any of our sub-area plans, but it will also really help with working towards some of the goals and policies that are in our 2016 plan when it comes to housing, and perhaps inform the work that we will be doing when we update our comprehensive plan in 2024. So thank you, everyone. Look forward to hearing your thoughts on the topic tonight.
Thanks, Sarah. A quick introduction of our team. So I'm Melissa Mayu with Mosaic Community Planning, and we are a consulting firm that is helping the city with this study. We have a few members of Mosaic's team on the Zoom tonight, Jeremy Gray, Jessica Fish, Kimberly Mitchell, and Mary Bosch, who is a principal at Marketech, but is a member of our team for this project. So you will see their faces once we break up into small groups, but just wanted to give you a quick introduction to them. And by way of introduction, we'd also like to get a sense of who is in the meeting. So if a quick poll, in terms of what brings you to the meeting today. Are you a resident of Camas who's kind of just interested in this project? Maybe someone in the housing industry, city staff, and then also how you learned about the meeting, if you could do those. Looks like we've got answers from everybody. So we've got a lot of interested residents here, about 2/3 of the crowd. One person from the housing industry and a few other folks. And looks like social media and email from the city were kind of an even split in terms of how people heard about the meeting. Well, thanks. That's helpful to kind of know who's in the crowd. And we'll be able to do more detailed introductions once we get into those small groups. Before doing that, I wanted to give a quick overview of what the Housing Action Plan is. So it's really designed to encourage diversity, affordability, and access to opportunity for people of all incomes. So that could include current Camas residents, future Camas residents, kind of knowing that the city is planning for growth based on its most recent comprehensive plan. Maybe people who currently work in Camas but are not able to live here, whether that's due to affordability or maybe not having housing stock that they're looking for. Things like that are kind of the goal of what this plan is designed to address. In terms of what it will include and kind of what our process will be, we'll do a pretty deep dive into housing, socioeconomic data about Camas and the surrounding area, the county, to kind of understand what are folks' needs here, what kind of housing currently exists, what's being built, things like that. Part of that will be looking at data, and another big part of it will be talking to people in the area to get a real solid on-the-ground perspective of the housing needs you all see in your community every day. So part of that is doing these public input sessions. We'll also be doing some focus groups with different stakeholders, some targeted resident focus groups, and activities on the Let's Talk Camas Housing website. So we really want to kind of get our arms around as much of the community as possible and hear from everyone who would be interested in participating. Another part of this plan will look at what are the existing resources for housing, what policies, zoning exist now, and identify what's working well, what could be improved, things like that. Out of those will come some specific strategies that the City of Camas can take moving forward to better address the housing needs of the city over the next 10 years or so. So towards the end of the project, we will do some more meetings similar to this where we're presenting drafts, talking about different strategies, and hearing from the community again. Finally, this will be something that's used to further the comprehensive plan goals and also be approved by City Council. Let's see. Next slide is kind of an agenda for that. So you can see that the final council approval would be happening by middle of next year. The deadline for that is June of 2021. So we'll be looking at refining the draft and doing presentations of it to the community in early 2021, following kind of developing an action plan based on all the research that we're doing now this fall through the end of the year. And just to note that the funding for this comes from a grant through the Washington State Department of Commerce. There was a few cities throughout the state got grants similar to this to do action plans like this year. So we're almost getting to the point where we're gonna be talking more to you about what housing needs you see here, what types of housing you'd like to see in the future. But I wanted to ground the discussion with a little bit of a look at some quick data regarding housing. The first table you see there is looking at residential structure type, so the type of residence, and probably no surprise to anyone living in Camas or familiar with the area that the majority of units are single-family detached. Row houses and small multifamily, those kind of duplex, triplex, quads, each make up about 5%. But multifamily, kind of 5 units or more, is only about 5% combined. So you can see there that there's definitely single family predominates. Most of the housing there is owner occupied, about 23% is rental. And looking at kind of your housing occupancy rate, that was also pretty high. I think about, based on this data from the Census's American Community Survey, about 96% of the housing there was recorded as occupied. So a pretty tight housing market that you all are experiencing. Then finally, a quick overview of kind of some permitting activities. So again, this bar graph is taken from the city's comprehensive plan. And you can see there that in 2015, a large share of the units permitted there were larger than 3,000 square feet. Definitely the majority were over 2,000 square feet, and just a few in that under 2,000 square feet category. We'll be looking at kind of some updated data about permitted units in the course of this project, but a little bit of an update since that data that was in the comp plan. Since 2016, most of the units approved have been single family, but that distribution is about 73% single family, about 27% multifamily. So a little bit more multifamily units approved in the last 5 years. Some which have been built yet and some have not been built yet. Then finally, I wanted to share some quick data about housing affordability. The figure that you see here is looking at some average housing costs for Clark County. Those are based on HUD's what they call fair market rents, which is kind of their data points of what could someone who's looking for a mid-range apartment expect to pay in this area. So that figure for a one bedroom is about $1,300 a month, which in order to keep that cost affordable, under 30% of someone's income, translates to a required income of about $51,500. You can see how that breaks down in terms of hours that you'd have to work at various wages. So for a 40-hour work week, you'd have to be earning about $25 an hour to afford that one bedroom unit. When you start looking at some of those minimum wages or the average renter wage in the county, certainly those numbers are considerably higher than the 40 hours a week, kind of a standard work week. And you can see that by the time you're looking at a 3-bedroom unit, kind of $2,000 a month is translating to an income of about $86,000, which if you're working at minimum wage or even the average kind of renter wage, is a work week well over one person's 40-hour work week, and over 2 people working 40 hours a week as well. Let's see. I kind of threw a lot of data at you right there, but is there any questions before we move on? Comments?
I see Jeffrey has a hand. Yeah, you can unmute and go ahead, Jeffrey.
Okay, I'm unmuted, maybe videoing now. Okay, so the HUD numbers, I happen to be a landlord in the area. Those are way high. They're off the scale high. I think a lot of the numbers that they use are for new constructions and the higher end units, but if the existing rental unit prices are nowhere near those numbers that are showing there on the left side of that page.
Are you sure?
Oh, yes. Yes, we are a landlord. They aren't even close.
Yeah. What I see on some of the sites, though, for rentals, I think that's actually pretty close.
No, not really. If you're looking at Craigslist and such, most of those units are higher end units. The lower end units tend to stay there. Existing units, especially some of the older ones, the rents are much less. We have 2-bedroom units, they're less than $1,000 a month. And those are very nice units. And we know a number of other landlords as well. Existing units tend to be quite a bit lower.
The data that HUD draws from to get those numbers is, I believe it's American Community Survey data that's collected through the census. So those fair market rents are usually pegged at about the median or the 40th percentile of what rents would be for an area. So if that was kind of the median rent in Clark County, certainly there would be, like you were saying, many half or so of the units that would rent for less than that. This figure is kind of trying to get at the average.
Perhaps if they are running houses in there and such versus apartments and those and duplexes and fourplexes and such, maybe you can pop them much higher. But I still think those are way high. And again, the landlords that I know in the area, those are way high. Those are new units that are being built generally that will go for that or even more. And a lot of the quote affordable homes that are being built in the Vancouver area and such, those numbers are much higher than the existing units out there. So just telling you what I see. I think those numbers are incorrect for the reality of the rental market.
Okay, well, sure. And we're still in the process of gathering data. So certainly we'll be looking at kind of recently constructed apartments and what are those rents, kind of what is new product that's coming online renting for, and also looking at more of a distribution of rents. So if you're looking, like you're saying, maybe more affordable units, I think we would capture some of that data through data that the census has about existing housing as well.
That makes sense if it's broken down more, because generalizing with those numbers, They don't make a lot of sense to people who are looking for an apartment generally and such. Yeah, breaking them down between apartments and duplexes, fourplexes, homes, and the higher end units would make some sense.
Sure. Okay.
There's some more discussion about those figures in the chat, and I just wanted to say one of our breakout questions that we wanted to do in that session was going to be some of your asking for some of your reactions to those figures that we provided, and wanting to hear some more about kind of how realistic you think some of the data is. And so those of you who have commented in the chat, I just wanted to let you know that and when we break out, we'll have some further opportunity to discuss that.
Yeah. Are there, and maybe we could move towards those breakout sessions, but are there any questions about the plan itself before we do that? Maybe less focused on the data, but questions about what we're doing or how? Okay. Well then,
I have a question actually, if we're able to ask. So just so that I understand clearly, because before we've done these community inputs and such, and I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but the consensus is they kind of die in a grave and never go anywhere, and things kind of chug along as they were initially planned. So you're saying that from this information that you gather from the grant, which is why I think it's so cool we're able to do this, mid next year is going to be when this information will be shared and implemented into what is going to happen with the North Shore. Is that what I understand?
Sarah, do you want to?
Sure, right. This project is actually separate. I'm sorry if I confused anyone. It's separate from the North Shore project that will run its own course. This project will provide a lot of useful information for all of the city's projects and all of our planning moving forward into, like I said, kind of feed into our 2024 comprehensive plan. So every 8 years we have to update our comprehensive plans, and in the 2016 comprehensive plan, the one that we're currently, that our current plan has goals and policies about housing and has goals and policies about other land uses and whatnot. But it'd be nice, this project will actually work towards some of those goals and policies and help us better refine perhaps new regulations for housing to better meet those goals when we are reevaluating and working on our 2024 plan. So I hope that makes a little more sense.
Thanks, Sarah. Paul, I see your hand raised.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you, Sarah. That's kind of a good follow-on is what policies are on the table for the 2024 plan that we could legitimately contribute to? Are we talking about denser development, changing legislation around alternative dwelling units? What exactly is up for grabs, or sky's the limit? There's got to be some bounds on what we can talk about realistically. Do you have any idea where those decision spaces are that we could contribute to in a meaningful way?
Well, this project, I guess the marching orders that were provided with the grant funds was really just to look at every city in the state better diversifying their housing, because the state put together a pretty large bound document of research that it was June of last year, and pretty much most cities look like ours. About 70% of the housing is single family. And knowing that we are facing not just a statewide crunch when it comes to affordable housing, but a nationwide affordable housing crunch, some of the tools to really addressing that would be to have more housing of different sizes and types to really help fit everyone's incomes. And so that's really, so in answer to your question, we don't have necessarily bookends to what we might propose, but it has to fit Camas, where there wouldn't be a plan moving forward that would be inconsistent with our current 2016 comprehensive plan, or like I said, any other policies moving forward. So and ultimately the decision makers that approve this is the elected city council.
Thank you.
I can't tell that anybody else is looking to ask a question at this point.
Okay, well, before we go into the breakout groups, we had one more poll for you. Pull it up. Kind of about how strongly you agree with the idea that Camas needs greater variety in terms of housing types and prices. Is that something you think the city should have as a priority?
One thing that might make it easier, I mean, for someone like me who's fairly new, is know what the range is. I mean, is there a cluster of low-end, smaller units that's available, or a giant cluster of kind of more expensive units? It looks to me like a rather well-off area with a cluster of kind of expensive options and not so many in the lower end, but I don't have any data to support that feeling. Is that available somewhere? Is that something that's going to be coming out as part of this process?
So that is something that will be coming out of this process, is kind of looking at the housing stock and how it varies within the city and how that compares to the county and other kind of surrounding cities. So you can see from those poll results that we have, I think, the most results sort of went towards that strongly agree, with one more person somewhat agreeing. But there is some disagreement in terms of agreement with that statement, if that makes sense. So that's something that we'll be able to talk a little bit more about in the breakout sessions. We have some questions that kind of get at exploring a little bit more of feelings behind what the future of Camas's housing should look like. So let's see. I will close that now. So let's see. I think we should, once we get into the breakout rooms, everyone should be able to have discussions. So without having to raise your hands or kind of take yourself off mute or anything like that. Let's see. So we should all move into the rooms now. It looks like folks are coming back from their breakout groups. Well, hopefully you are able to have a good discussion with the folks that you were talking with. And maybe there is more that you have to say on the topic too. Some of you probably went to this website to log in for this meeting or register for the meeting. But over the next couple days, we will be posting the recordings of our public input sessions, the one from tonight and also from the one that we'll be doing tomorrow at noon. So if you want to go and see what the other groups that you weren't in had to say, you can check it out there. We will have video of the main session and then some notes that we took from within the breakout groups. So you won't necessarily see a video of your breakout group, but you'll see a reflection of kind of what the discussion was about. So there'll be an opportunity to share more if you didn't have a chance to say anything or to say everything that you wanted to. And also to take a look at what some of your neighbors might have said or what folks tomorrow will say. We'll be adding a few features to that site, things like a survey, a couple other interactive features over the next week or so. So look for opportunities to provide input there. You can register so that as those become available, you would get an email that there's a new opportunity to participate. And as a draft of the plan becomes available and as there's public engagement around that draft, you'll get a notice of that and an opportunity to participate in that. think we're close to our hour, but any questions, or I don't know, Sarah, if you had any wrap up that you wanted to do? We really appreciate everyone's participation and their time tonight. We're glad to hear from you all in kind of an unusual setting, a little bit different than a typical public meeting, but we really appreciate your participation. And if there are friends or neighbors, colleagues that you work with that you feel like might be interested in this who weren't here tonight, we're having another, it'll be the exact same format tomorrow at noon. And if they can't make that, please feel free to share that website with them. We want to hear from as many folks there as possible.
I'll just say thank you. Thank you for everyone for showing up tonight and, taking time out of your evening to chat to us about housing and just starting this engagement with us, because it's, as you know, it's going to take a few more months before we really have enough information to kind of share back out and start working on any of the proposals. So I appreciate everyone just being early and engaged with us. So thank you.
Well, I'll close the meeting now unless there's anything else, but thanks everyone for your participation. We really appreciate it. And have a good evening.